Assalamu alaikum. My name's Salim Siddiqui, and thanks for watching this continuing series on the hotconflict.com website. We're talking about the unseen, and we're continuing to talk about interesting issues, especially at this time. Right now it's November 5th, and there are many people talking online, especially in the YouTube community, about certain things that might be happening this month and things that are going on, and people are talking about disclosures and first contact and alien races and strange phenomena. And so because we always like to talk about interesting things, thought, let's just play the game, right? Let's get the information out there. So many people are talking. So I could, of course, just say, okay, this is going to happen this day and this is going to happen that day. I can tell you precise moment that things are going to happen. But then what's the point of that? There are so many people saying all kinds of things. Who knows what's going to happen? And we've said, if you are truly understanding the way things work, it is not actually important or relevant to see a reference point in time. Somebody who is placing a reference point on the time spectrum clearly doesn't understand what's happening, because time in and of itself is not one of the foundations that we use for understanding. And we've been telling this story of truth and talking about some of the ways to understand the story, and that the story itself is a map. And if you're understanding the story, then you can read some of the signs for yourself. And since I'm claiming and saying very clearly that the world is changing, and we've been talking about this process of ascension, and we're talking about light workers and all different kinds of people, but one of the things that I've been doing is telling a story from the Muslim point of view, using the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad's guidance to explain it the way I see it, and showing you how some of the details that we have reference so many of the things that people in the Lightworker community and even the UFO Disclosure community are talking about, but explained in a different context that give you a better understanding. And of course, the challenge must be made that if that is the case, of course that should be true. If the Prophet Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, the final light worker of all those sent in the Brotherhood of Light, as ordered by the Lord Most High, with the final word of the Lord, the final revelation, not the Old Testament or the New Testament, but the final testament, and a prophet who showed us by his example the way of understanding as a map maker, his path, his methodology, his sunnah, or his understanding of the signs as interpreted by his living with us, and his revelation of the scripture through the Archangel Gabriel. If you understand that as a concept, then we should be able to say, then the people who have that knowledge should be able to tell you the signs and show you what the story is about, to even tell you what people are talking about in coming first contact in other races. Now, I've been talking about other races and jinns and other beings and other humans in various forms from the beginning of this story. And so if people are talking about when first contact is going to be, and I'm claiming that I understand the unseen of what is in the authentic Quran and Sunnah, then of course I should be able to know when things are going to happen, just like anybody else who has some understanding of divination. But if my story is true, and that I'm telling you that by telling you the story of truth and now explaining and deciphering some of the unseen parts in each of the prophets, then I'm claiming that you should have already heard from me when first contact is going to be, and I should have already told you, because if the story of truth is the proper map for a light worker at this time, told by someone who understands it from the legacy of the final light worker sent with the authority from the Lord Most High, then if I told that story the correct way, the information that you're seeking is already there. So did I already tell you when first contact was going to be? Well, let's just go back right into where we were, where we last left off, and fill in some of the interesting gaps. We said we're in a world of duality. We're in a world of darkness where people are not remembering that they have a soul and there is a higher connection. And we're starting to see people talking about that. We're realizing that there are changes going on in the earth. And we're calling this process of ascension. Many of the people in the Lightworker community know this process. In Arabic, we know the process as being one that is termed from the night journey and ascension, Isra and Mi'raj, of the last and final messenger, peace and blessings be upon him. And we're saying that there are certain fundamentals to understand that there is a Lord, Creator Most High, light of all lights, the source of all that is. And he has created angels of the light, and he has created other beings called the Jinn of various forms and kinds and levels. And that there are then us humans, right? We understand that, and we have souls, and there are prophets sent to all the communities, and they have scriptures and books, and there's a final day of judgment, and there is eternal punishment and reward of everlasting bliss or torture for those who refuse to accept the light by the end of the whole process, which is not at the moment, by the way, right? We're talking about the actual final day, that which we call the Day of Judgment. And that all of this is by the Qadr Allah, or a destiny, fate, plan. Both the good and the bad and everything that we see is a pattern, a structure, a matrix, a organized system. Not random, not coincidental. Everything being where it is because there is a reason. And so going back right into the unseen, we've talked about some strange issues. We've talked about the fact that this earth was the place for Adam and Eve, and Adam was chosen to be the best of all creation and created in the best mold. And we know that there was troubles that happened before that, and we went through the cycle, and obviously we talked about the interaction between humans and other races before the time of Noah, and possible interaction that led to the total destruction of the earth and a change in the cycle. Because we said that now that we understand from one of the most important verses, and maybe now is a good time to go right into this, especially for Muslims who have had a hard time understanding this concept, is the verse وَفِي السَّمَاوَاتِ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ مِثْلَهُنَّ, that there are 7 levels of the skies or heavens, or 7 tabaqat or levels of the skies, each one huge and vast compared to the next level, and of the earth the same. Now this verse from the Quran has been one that has caused a lot of mystery and debate and intrigue, because it deals with such esoteric subjects as the different levels of heavens, and even subjects like the different inner earths or civilizations or cycles of man. And it has so many hidden meanings that many times a lot of people don't know a lot of the issues behind it. Now, one of the most famous narrations is of one of the companions who knew the interpretation of this verse, and he talked about the fact that at that time people weren't ready to understand and weren't able to comprehend a lot of these issues that we're talking about, such as planets floating in the sea of space and other beings and other planets and beings in other dimensions. The vastness of everything compared to just a few hundred years ago or even 1,000 years ago, and people's understanding at that time of modern man, as we call modern man of our day and age. It was hard to understand a lot of these concepts, yet there were still people who understood these things. And so one of the companions, after the passing of the way of the Prophet, said before his own death, he wanted the knowledge to be passed on, that one of the things that this has to do with is that there are other Adams and other Ibrahims and other Muhammads like our own on this planet elsewhere. Now, that is something that for many Muslims has not been known. I mean, when you talk about these subjects of having other humanoids and other planets, the majority of the Muslims don't know the tafsir, or the explanation of some of these verses, because it's not a subject that is necessary for most people to know, and hasn't been necessary for the majority of the people until now, because we said that one of the things that we understood was that there was this comprehensive system of understanding in the universe, that races didn't interfere with other races, and beings from other dimensions and other systems didn't interfere with the development of other people. And that humans and other humans were developing each in their own way at different times. And we said, if we look back at some of the unseen that we talked about, other civilizations having interactions before and after the time of Noah, and strange things going on. And we talked about similar things going on during the time prior to Abraham, and we talked about it during the time of Moses and David and Solomon, and some of the understandings there. We talked about interesting concepts like the sacred geometry and the building of the Kaaba by Adam and the black stone, and again the building of the Kaaba after being lost during the flood and not knowing what happened to the black stone, again being built by Abraham and his firstborn son in the deserts, again at the heart chakra center of the earth in Mecca, now being built again, a cube, right, a four-sided temple or mosque or holy house erected to the Lord Most High. And we talked about Abraham understanding the process of ascension and understanding the hidden realms and dimensions by the very nature of his questioning and his process of ascension being the most noble and honorable status as the father of all of the faith and all of the souls of the Lightworkers. And we talked about an interesting little tidbit that mankind wasn't the first to ascend, that Lucifer, or some might call the Reptilians, were the first to ascend. And then we got into some interesting concepts coming to the time of Jesus, son of Mary. Now, before we go into the recap of Jesus, son of Mary, I want to recap this concept that there are vast civilizations all over the universe, each at different levels of understanding. And we're seeing that people ascend to different levels depending on their understanding, and that as societies advance at different levels, they become spiritually or technologically more adept and develop different ways, sometimes spiritually being able to access through different realms, and sometimes technologically advancing through the development of technology that allows them movement and understanding of space and time and different realms. And we're also understanding that in the ascension process, there are levels and cycles of planets that humans and people of faith exist throughout the galaxy and universe, and that out there are cycles of people going on this process of ascension. And one of the things that you're hearing from many of the people in the Lightworker community, either channeled or otherwise, is that there are different levels and different cycles, and process of ascension goes on many planets, and many people have their own determined cycles based on their own development and their own pattern. We've been talking about this in generalizations, and we said that one of the larger groups that people talk about is now this concept that as people ascend to higher levels, they start to get organized and get beyond the level of fear and lack, and start to understand that there is abundance and ampleness in the universe. And when they spiritually give up that fear and chaos as a society and grow towards purification of the heart, body, and mind as a society, they get to a point where they can then travel and interact with beings beyond their own dimension or planet. And this is a natural process that happens with most civilizations as the process occurs. And then sometimes planets and civilizations get to an end-time catastrophe or destruction if they haven't naturally got to the time of awakening on their own, and people from higher realms help them along in the ascension process, and beings with higher degrees of technology help those who are spiritually advanced, and some of them die and then go through the process of ascension. And this is sometimes done without body, meaning people die in catastrophes and disasters and then are greeted by beings of higher realms and angels of light and different other entities that is going to be made known in public to people very soon. And this process goes on, but something different is happening here, because we said the time of Noah changed the cycle a little bit, and things are happening slightly strangely here. And then we get to this point where the children of Israel, who are the chosen people, are waiting for a Messiah to come from amongst them. And they have been protecting their bloodline, and they are waiting for a chosen one. And the birth of Jesus, son of Mary, occurs. And we went through the important issues of blood and why that is important. And then we talked about the relevance of him being a fully Christed being, a fully lighted being. Now this is important because we didn't deal with it yesterday, but some of the hidden or unseen concepts is that in this idea is that there is different levels of yourself, and that you exist on many different dimensions and levels, and that Jesus, son of Mary, was his own highest Christed self. Now, a lot of times in some of the false misunderstanding of many of the issues like paganism related to the sun, moon, and stars that Abraham was trying to correct, or some of the false worship of animals or plants or any of the things that are part of the creation, because we said nothing that is in part of the existence, whether it be the sun, the moon, or the stars, or the planet, or anything, water, trees, anything that is created, including other beings at higher realms, nothing is worthy of worship except for the Creator himself, and he is the Creator who is unseen. Now, Jesus, son of Mary, is a fully Christed being who is a being. Of course, he is the one who represents the highest state of a lighted soul that mankind has ever seen. And I say this with all due respect to our brother Jesus, son of Mary, but he is not the Lord Most High, the Creator of all that is. Hallowed be the name of the Lord Most High. And my brother Yeshua will agree wholeheartedly with me that he is not the Creator of himself. How foolish a thought, right? No one is the creator of themselves, right? We have been given a divine spark by the Lord, a soul, that is true, right? And that is one of the miracles of Jesus, peace and blessing be upon him, that he was made by the very word of the Lord. Be, and he was. Out of nothingness the Lord made him into the womb of Mother Mary. And he was born of the flesh and lived a holy, noble birth, as we went into some of the details. And then we talked about the importance of this cycle of the prophets, as I'm telling the tale, that the noble messenger Jesus told his 12 disciples in the pattern of 12 that there is a cycle beyond the personal Merkaba. Now, up to this point, we've been talking about sacred geometry, and many people in the Lightworker community have been talking about this concept that once you understood that from the time of Moses all the way till the time of Jesus, the noble and holy men of the children of Israel have understood the process of ascension and understood some of the concepts of the higher realms, because they have understood the Star of David. It was their symbol for the reason, and the knowledge contained within the holy temple of our brother Solomon, or Suleiman, gave so much at that time. Now, of course, we know that it later got lost and deceived and corrupted and so forth, as all happens to all communities. Then we get to the point in sacred geometry where Jesus, son of Mary, informs them in the sacred geometry pattern, and I'll do a whole nother sacred geometry series where we go over some of the actual patterns, where there is actually 12 full races, and that he, Jesus, is a fully Christed being, is not a 13th, and that man himself is not the 13th race that Lucifer so feared. Jesus informs them that we are the one. We are the center of all 12. We are the inheritors both of the soul of light and of the blood of the flesh, molded by the very Lord, creator of Adam, and in the pattern of chaos and fear and destruction that has occurred on the earth, all that incorporates the matrix of existence forms the sons of Adam. You see, being born and living and having a soul come into existence by divine decree, by the challenge of Abraham, that the Lord is the only one who actually gives a soul. And a person who lives in this matrix and is born of the flesh here on the earth becomes a son of Adam. Living through this ascension makes you a son of Adam. All of us are equal in that, because by the time we get to Jesus, son of Mary, the blood of everybody and the mixture of everything has been spread to such a degree that there is everything of every kind, of every race within all that exists. And there is no longer any separation. And the choice is fully there for anybody to focus in and bring in that light and ascend on their own, or to choose the darkness. Now, granted, it was still not difficult, right? I mean, difficult is a foolish word to say for all of us upon the light. If anyone makes the intent and chooses and is determined, no one can misguide them. But difficult in the sense that in those days, even at the time of my brother Jesus, you had to spend a lot of time at temple and really be focused on reading the Torah and doing your worship and fasting during the day and praying at night. You really had to leave off a lot of the world, to leave off the harmonics and the frequency and the distraction and the patterns that are built into the system to distract you. Built in with that was a lot of purification and ritual and bathing and washing and praying and all the things that we talk about when we get into the Prophet Muhammad to ascend. But that knowledge was there. But Jesus brings in an interesting another factor, that now anybody can do that. And that's important when he says the Holy Grail or the Sangral, the royal blood or the flesh of his flesh, is that now anybody could rise to that level. And this was part of what was trying to be taught, that was going to go beyond just the Jews to the Gentiles. And even the organized religion, of course, many people who talk about organized religion always have a hatred for organized religion, because they tell you the same thing, that they're trying to conceal information from you and not tell you the truth because they don't want you to know that this has been open to you. Now, this is one of the things that happen. The other thing that you have to notice is that the story itself is the pattern. What am I telling you? The reason why I told you the story in this way is that Jesus, on his final day, fast with his brothers, the ritual fast from sunrise till sunset. And at sunset, they break bread. And he begins the Last Supper and begins to divulge everything from the beginning to the end, and discloses everything that is disclosed to the companions or the apostles or the disciples at that time, including all the stuff I'm telling you, plus more, done much better than me, of course, in a more concise fashion. Yes, but the essence of what I'm telling you, humbly, Allah have mercy on me and forgive me, this concept of the ascension, and that he is going to ascend, of course. Now, that story goes from sunset to almost sunrise, and then the following day he ascends. This is a pattern where we ended last time. And one of the other things that we talked about was that after the ascension of Jesus, son of Mary, what happened? Well, we said that there now becomes a problem. Already the Jews rejected Jesus as the Messiah. And we said that Muslims obviously accept Jesus as the true Messiah, and we accept the Mother Mary in her noble status. And we believe in the ascension of Christ, and we believe in his second coming. So where is the discrepancy? The discrepancy is in exactly what happens next. There are those who believe that Christ ascended, and there are those who believe that Christ was crucified and died and then rose from the dead and then was seen. Already now we have issues. You mean, wait, what happened? Did Christ ascend or did he die? Or did he die and then ascend or wait? Well, in the Quran, one of the things that the Prophet is taught, and we're telling you very clearly, is وَمَا قَتَلُوا وَمَا صَلَبُوا. That Allah says he wasn't killed, obviously. Let's get that clear. وَمَا صَلَبُوا, nor was he even crucified. What? Many Christians have a hard time with this. So different people saw different things? Is it possible that different people see different things in this matrix? Do you mean people who are spiritual and understood things at a higher level saw Christ ascend, whereas others saw something that looked like Jesus get crucified and believed he died? And then maybe people who were spiritual did see Christ after he ascended again? Interesting issues, and we'd all like to know the exact story that happened, but what we have to have an open mind to is that the idea that different people might see different things. Different people might see different things. Different people might see different things in the sky. Well, we said that after Christ ascended, we know that Jesus, son of Mary, didn't die, whether you have this conversation or not, that Jesus, son of Mary, is unlike every other person in that because he is a noble, Christed soul going through none of the same cycles that we have gone through, and the fact that he, unlike any other messenger, has a noble status, one of the things that isn't known to many people is that Jesus, son of Mary, then goes on to travel to many other planets, not just this earth. Yes. Jesus, son of Mary, has gone to other places other than this earth. And there are people who follow his teachings called the Nasara. They have ascended, and some of them are still on their own planets learning, and different things are going on. And those communities call themselves the Nasara, those who follow the teachings of Jesus, son of Mary, the last true prophet of their area. And they are a majority, or not a majority, a major group or a large group of the higher beings or the higher realms or the Lightworkers or the UFO beings or alien beings or the first contact beings, people who call themselves those of the Nasara. And so we gave a big disclosure yesterday and talked about them and said that they are coming, and gave that open welcome to my brothers and sisters of the Nasara. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. And we talked about the fact that the Muslims and the Christians are going to join in unity, and those who are Christian and those who are Muslims who are upon the truth will have an understanding of this. Now we got to a point that is important now, because we are going to start explaining from the very story. If we've gotten to the last point of Jesus, son of Mary's ascension, and a difference of opinion on whether he died or did not die and then ascend, and the fact that others who have already gone through the ascension process are coming, who are following his teachings. And we're talking about seeing different things in the sky depending on your understanding. And we've talked about some of the hidden meanings of the prophets of light. And now I'm claiming as a Muslim that I'm now going to tell you some of the hidden meanings from the story of the prophet. And once you know those things, you should be able to see the signs for yourself. Let's take a break. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.